CGTN, China Global Television Network. Live from London, this is The World Today.
Hello, I'm Louise Javakil. Welcome to the programme. Our top stories this hour. China's President Xi calls for stronger ties between Asia-Pacific nations as the APEC summit wraps up. Hanging in the balance, negotiations at COP27 go down to the wire, with some officials threatening to walk away. And on the eve of the World Cup, FIFA's president accuses the West of hypocrisy over criticism of Qatar. Chinese President Xi Jinping has called for a stronger family bond between Asia-Pacific nations on the final day of the APEC summit in Thailand. He also said China will look to ramp up trade cooperation with other countries in the economic bloc. Our correspondent Zhao Yunfei reports.
The Asia-Pacific family, this is a term that shows up on both Chinese President Xi Jinping's written speech at the APEC CEO summit and his keynote at the economic leaders meeting. With a surge in global crisis, China has once again vowed to pursue unity with its neighbors. To better promote ties, President Xi stressed the importance of openness at Saturday's economic leaders meeting. He said China will open its door wider and will do more to import quality goods and services and create stronger markets, growth, and cooperation opportunities for the world. President Xi said efforts are needed to build a regional economic cooperation architecture featuring equal-footed consultation, joint participation, and shared benefits in order to foster a big Asia-Pacific market that delivers benefits to all. The Chinese president met with Thai Prime Minister Prayut Chan-o-cha on the sidelines of APEC. The two countries signed a joint statement on working towards a China-Thailand community with a shared future for enhanced stability, prosperity, and sustainability. The statement celebrated the 10th anniversary of the China-Thailand Comprehensive Strategic Cooperative Partnership. China is Thailand's top trading partner, with bilateral trade reaching more than $103 billion last year. Exports accounted for more than 70% of Thailand's GDP, with fresh fruits the major product. Thai officials are working to make the exporting path faster and smoother under the Belt and Road Initiative. China has been pursuing a high-quality development of the Belt and Road Initiative. As President Xi said, China is actively enhancing complementary between the Belt and Road Initiative and development strategies of other parties to jointly build a Asia-Pacific connectivity network. Zhao Yunfei, CGTN, Bangkok.
No deal is better than a bad one. Negotiators at the United Nations COP27 summit are at odds over a final agreement on compensation for climate disasters. The tense talks pushed the summit into an extra day in the hopes of reaching approval among the nearly 200 countries in Egypt. Some officials have threatened to walk away if progress isn't made. Let's go to our correspondent Yasser Hakim, who's live in Sharm el-Sheikh in Egypt for us. Yasser, we're hearing that a deal may be perhaps imminent on critical compensation for climate funding. What exactly do we know on the ground?
Well, at the moment, the delegates and the 200 countries, about 200 countries, are now meeting right behind me in the hall, in the main hall, where they're trying to map out the final resolution or draft resolution and have a unanimous vote on it before coming out to announce if there is a deal or not. Yes, it's been a tough day. The EU threatened to walk out of the deal, of the conference as a whole, after being accused of not doing enough to developing nations, while on the other side we've seen the agreement, the draft agreement says that losses and damages is going to be a fund where the EU and developed nations will be putting funds in it or paying into it in cases of any climate hazards, and it is not linked to what the EU wanted before as a renewable energy and initiatives for reducing emissions, gas emissions and fossil fuels and coal. Back to you.
And the summit's already been pushed into the weekend. It's not uncommon for COP meetings to run into overtime. What happens next?
Yes, it's normal here for anyone who's been at COPs before. We hope, or everyone is waiting to see what will happen right now in the meeting room behind us. If there's a deal, then they will go out and announce the deal. And what will happen next is that everyone will be working on ratifying this deal in each government so that it can be implemented globally. If not, then we might have to wait for another day on Sunday. And this is also an issue that the government said, and the COP presidency said, that it will stay on it until a deal is reached, either Saturday or Sunday. Back to you.
That's Hakeem for us live in Sharm el-Sheikh. Thank you. Well, for more on this story, we're joined by Nafkote Darby from Sharm el-Sheikh. She's the climate change policy lead at Oxfam. Thank you for being with us. First things first, then, what's known at this moment about the deal that's reportedly on the verge of being agreed?
What we are hearing is really good news for loss and damage. What developing countries and communities at the front line of the crisis have been asking for is for the establishment of the loss and damage fund. So that what we're hearing is being agreed, both by the rich countries. Of course, this has been pushed a lot by developing countries. So this will be really, really good news if it's agreed, because it will give a lot of hope for vulnerable communities at the front line of the crisis, because there is a much needed fund to address issues of damages and losses. So as of now, we're being positive. We're hearing good news.
Positivity and good news, but if you look at the details, that's going to be really important here. Do you think that enough has been done to try and placate the concerns of the developed countries and those most at risk?
So there are two issues that we need to discuss. One is when it comes to the loss and damage fund, after it's agreed, we need finance to go into the fund, and we need it urgently, because right now, as we're speaking, close to 40 million people in the Horn of Africa are experiencing hunger. In Pakistan has experienced, economic damages and losses up to 30 billion. Actually, this is a conservative estimate. So, the impacts from climate crisis is increasing. So there's urgent need for finance. So establishing the fund doesn't mean, that's it. Actually, as soon as possible after the fund is established, we need to make it operational, and then real money needs to go to it. And then when you look at climate finance in general, what has happened so far, it doesn't give a lot of trust, because the 100 billion goal, for instance, hasn't been hasn't been met in 2020, 2021, 2022. So what we're hearing is it's going to be reached in 2023. But what developing countries have been asking, and also civil society, is that 600 billion between 2020 to 2025 is there's a clear roadmap from developed countries saying this is how we're going to meet this. There's also another issue, actually, that I didn't mention, which is the issue of raising ambition to limit warming to 1.5. And that hasn't been agreed. And that's actually what's delaying the negotiation further, because what's on the text right now is what was agreed at Glasgow, which is phase down of coal. But what is needed to limit warming to 1.5 is phase out of all fossil fuels, and this has to be equitable. And that's where the disagreement is.
Yeah.
And more fossil fuel will mean more damages and losses.
Yeah, but we'll have to wait to see the details, and that deal reportedly on the verge of being agreed in Sharm el-Sheikh. Nafkote Darby, the climate change policy lead at Oxfam. Thank you.
Thank you.
Scientists say climate change is damaging some of the most remote and coldest parts of the world. A UK polar research ship is setting sail for Antarctica next week. The Sir David Attenborough vessel will study polar ice caps and the oceans around them to offer a clearer picture of the effects of global warming. CGTN's Andrew Wilson met the crew in Essex before they set sail.
The UK's state-of-the-art exploration vessel is ready for its second voyage to the Southern Ocean, taking on supplies in Harwich. It surpassed expectations on its first trials, its intricate thruster system keeping the ship steady in challenging seas.
The dynamic positioning system is really good. The ice-breaking capability of the ship as well. So the bow of the ship is shaped like a spoon upside down. So as the ship goes forward, it rides up over the ice and breaks the ship with the weight, so we can still keep moving through the ice.
The purpose is knowledge and the mission urgent. 60 scientists on board to chart and record the currents, chemical compositions and temperatures of the Antarctic. Once a wilderness, now a place of climate vulnerability. There's a remote submersible to gather crucial data from under the ice as the ocean temperatures gradually rise.
And if that warm water, particularly in West Antarctica, goes underneath the ice shelves and sort of lifts up the ice shelves, and that water gets into the heart of some of those big ice sheets, then it can start melting the ice from below, from the heart of these ice sheets. And then we're looking at glaciers melting, which is 2 or 3 metres of global sea level rise.
And for all on board, that sense of urgency.
I've sort of been doing this for 10, 15 years, and even in that time, we are starting to see more and more changes happening more rapidly at the polar regions, and that makes us feel the importance of what we're doing. I think what it has done, and especially with a ship like this, the David Attenborough, is that it's really focused our minds to work together, and that can be between nations or it can be between science disciplines.
The UK isn't alone in scouring the planet's frozen extremes for clues, but the David Attenborough breaks new ground in scientific exploration. Poles north and south of the planet hold the secrets, the ice caps floating in the Arctic and the ice sheets covering the bedrock of Antarctica. The data is so crucial. What this ship will do is unlock the secrets that will tell us what the climate is doing, what the climate is planning to do, and most importantly, how quickly it's going to do it. The David Attenborough should clear the South Atlantic in 3 weeks. From then on, it's down into the ice and an Antarctic summer of investigation. Andrew Wilson, CGTN, Harwich.
UK Prime Minister Rishi Sunak has visited Ukraine for the first time since taking office last month. Sunak met with President Volodymyr Zelensky in Kyiv. During the meeting, Sunak announced a $60 million air defense package to help protect Ukrainian civilians and infrastructure. He also reiterated the UK's continued support for Ukrainian forces. Malaysians have been lining up to vote in a tightly contested general election. The vote split between 3 main coalitions, with none expected to win enough seats in Parliament to reach a majority. Prime Minister Ismail Sabri Yaakob called the snap election in October, hoping to cement his mandate to govern. Nepal will hold a general election on Sunday, which the ruling coalition is expected to win. Candidates have promised to bring down inflation, create jobs and boost the economy, but many Nepalis say they don't expect to see too much change. Our correspondent Ravinder Bawa reports.
Campaigning has been in full swing in Nepal. The ruling party has been on a door-to-door campaign to woo their voters. The buzz is missing in these elections as the voters are disappointed with the same old faces in the fray.
My expectation with the upcoming government is not much. The main problem of Nepalese leader is the corruption. Actually, there should be zero tolerance in the corruption.
Instead of sending citizens abroad for work, it would be better for the government to create jobs locally and employ them. What good does it do for the government to send its own citizens away?
Surging global energy and food prices have hurt the import-dependent economy. Rising prices and lack of employment has made it difficult for the Nepalese to make the two ends meet. The nation is still struggling to recover from the blow to the key tourism industry after the pandemic.
So what I expect the newly government is to focus on tourism, because we have a really good nature and we are rich in natural resources. So a lot of tourists are coming after COVID. That was not expected after the COVID.
The election pits the ruling alliance of the Nepali Congress Party, led by Prime Minister Sher Bahadur Deuba, and some former Maoist rebels against the Nepali Communist Unified Marxist-Leninist Party, led by former Prime Minister KP Sharma Oli.
Election promises are not important. The main thing is to make preparations to fulfill these promises. Will the new government make these preparations or not? The promises cannot be fulfilled without getting the necessary manpower ready. Secondly, it is necessary to address the economy in a new manner.
The fate of more than 11,500 candidates will be decided by 8th December. The election results will also pave the way for Nepal's political trajectory going forward. Ravinder Baba, CGTN.
Still ahead here on CGTN. The countdown to the World Cup overshadowed again as FIFA's president lashes out at critics on the eve of the tournament.
Ever wondered what's the difference between a bear and a bull market? Where are the cash cows? And who are the lame ducks? And what exactly are black swans? Grey rhinos? And unicorn companies? Make sense of it all with Global Business, only on CGTN.
There's a new agenda for a new world, accelerating change in almost every part of our lives. It's shifting the norms of how we work, travel, and connect. How we think, interact, and develop. It's a new reality, a new agenda with me, Juliet Mann.
Welcome back. A reminder of our headline. China's President Xi calls for stronger ties between Asia-Pacific nations as the APEC meeting wraps up. And hanging in the balance, negotiations at COP27 go down to the wire, with some officials threatening to walk away. FIFA President Gianni Infantino has accused the West of hypocrisy over criticism of Qatar's human rights record. The Arab nation has faced allegations of human rights abuses and concerns over the deaths of migrant workers building facilities for the Football World Cup. But Infantino says European nations should apologise for acts they've committed historically, rather than giving lessons on morality.
Today, I have very strong feelings, I can tell you that. Today I feel Qatari. Today I feel Arab. Today I feel African. Today I feel gay. Today I feel disabled. Today I feel a migrant worker.
Let's get more on this. Our correspondent Dan Williams is in Doha, the Qatari capital, for us. Dan, a passionate defence of the tournament and Qatar from FIFA's president there in this bizarre, some would say extraordinary monologue. How's it gone down?
Yeah, it really was, as you say, an extraordinary monologue. Lasted almost an hour, and clearly Infantino believing that attack is a better tactic than defence. It was wide-ranging, talked about how he was bullied as a child. There was also a European migrant history lesson in there as well. But his real focus, it has to be said, very much on the West and Western media, especially following weeks of attacks across various media platforms. Infantino saying enough is enough and calling those attacks hypocritical, saying that countries like England, France, USA, they attack Qatar on their migrant workers' rights, but they do very little themselves to do anything about it, saying that in fact Qatar has created opportunities for migrant workers to come over here, visas to come here, work and make some money, whereas some of those other countries haven't allowed that to happen at all in terms of the way that they treat migrant workers. Going on to say, I'm European. For what we have been doing for 3,000 years around the world, we should be apologising for the next 3,000 years, saying that the West has provided a one-sided moral lesson. Clearly, this very much aimed at the string of attacks that have been building over the last few weeks, building into this World Cup, a chance for Infantino to try and wrestle back some of the narrative as this World Cup gets ready to kick off.
Dan Williams for us live in Doha. Thanks for that, Dan. Kieran Maguire is an expert in football finance at the University of Liverpool. He joins me now to discuss this a bit further. First things first, and what's your reaction, Kieran, to Infantino's words?
They did seem a little bit strange in the sense that it was only 2 weeks ago that Infantino wrote to all 32 participating nations in respect of the FIFA 22 World Cup and said, let's focus on football and let's separate football from politics. And yet he decided to go on this 60-minute discussion or statement today, which did seem to be lacking in structure. I think it's certainly taken the attention away from the Budweiser decision yesterday.
And many host nations have faced criticism before. I'm thinking of the likes of Brazil, Russia, South Africa in recent years. But once the football gets underway, the mood does feel rather different. What are your expectations for this tournament then?
It will be exactly the same. I've been watching the World Cup since 1970, I think. And we've always seen, especially with the sort of the rise of global media who are prepared to hold hosts to account. We've always seen scare stories. I've attended World Cups myself, and they've always been fantastic affairs. It's a bit like the film Men in Black, where people see something or talk about something horrendous, and then you use your magic eraser pen, and everything's forgotten because the focus is going to be on the next 4 weeks solely on the football, and all of this preamble which will be very quickly forgotten if it's a successful World Cup. And everybody that likes football will be wanting it to be a successful World Cup as far as what we see taking place on the pitch. It doesn't mean that what happens off the pitch can be ignored, though.
And we've seen a major U-turn, as you mentioned, on beer sales at matches this week too. Those will now largely be prohibited. Just in terms of a finance perspective, do you think Qatar 2022 is going to have a lasting impact on the sponsorship of these events?
I think there'll be an element of caution as far as the senior sponsors of FIFA are concerned. And the reason for that is that many of them do sign multi-tournament deals. But if you take a look at the small print of a FIFA contract, it says that first and foremost, the local laws and regulations and customs take priority over the ability to sell individual products. And they will say, well, Budweiser should have been aware of that. I think Budweiser's response would have been, well, it would have been nice to have been told about this more than 48 hours before the tournament started.
Kieran, thanks for your thoughts. That's Kieran Maguire, an expert in football finance from the University of Liverpool.
Thank you.
Theranos founder Elizabeth Holmes has been jailed for more than 11 years after being found guilty of defrauding investors. The blood testing startup was once valued at $9 billion. She claimed its machines could diagnose diseases from just a few drops of blood. But the technology didn't work and the company was dissolved in 2018. Holmes, who says she's devastated by her failures, is expected to appeal the verdict. 2 firefighters were killed when a LATAM Airlines jet crashed with a fire truck during takeoff at Lima Airport. Peru's health ministry says no passengers or crew were killed, but at least 20 passengers were treated for injuries, 2 of them for serious wounds. Officials say they're investigating the incident at Jorge Chavez International Airport as potential manslaughter. At least 10 prisoners have been killed during a riot at a jail in Ecuador's capital, Quito. Authorities say the riot was a result of the government's decision to move several gang leaders to a high-security facility. Jail violence has soared in Ecuador since 2020, with at least 400 people killed. Germany, France and Spain have set aside their differences and taken a big step forward with construction of a next-generation combat fighter jet. After intense negotiations, the path is now clear for development. Our correspondent Ken Brown has the story.
It's called the Future Combat Air System and it's Europe's most ambitious defence project ever. France, Spain and Germany will now move forward on a next-generation fighter jet that is set to cost over $100 billion. A breakthrough came in negotiations on Friday. The German Defence Minister, Christine Lambrecht, revealed that a deal between manufacturers had been reached for the next phase of the programme. The project idea was initially proposed back in 2017 by France and Germany. Spain later joined, but delays were caused by a dispute over the sharing of the work, some intellectual property issues on the technologies and jet specifications. Airbus and Dassault Aviation, the two largest companies involved, have now agreed on a way forward. This cooperation will advance development of a fighter jet with integrated drone capabilities and advanced communication systems. The Spanish Defence Ministry has pledged over $2.5 billion for the next phase, with payments to begin in the new year. This phase will involve the construction of a demonstrator jet. It's positive news for Franco-German relations after some disagreements over an EU-wide cap on the price of gas and emergency aid programs to help tackle the energy crisis. With closer cooperation on defence, Europe is coming together to create a strategy they hope will give them greater autonomy in uncertain times. Ken Brown, CGTN, Madrid.
Musicians from China and Germany have come together for a joint performance to mark 50 years of diplomatic ties between the two countries. The concert at the China Cultural Center in Berlin featured a repertoire of Chinese and Western pieces.
It's very special for us all in Europe that finally there is a Chinese delegation. It's the cultural exchange which is based on friendship, diplomatic ties and friendship between two nations. And when we come together like this, we realize that we have a shared passion and that we are so excited to train musicians, to have musicians on our stage and to enjoy wonderful musical activities together.
A look at our headlines once again. China's President Xi calls for stronger ties between Asia-Pacific nations as the APEC meeting wraps up in Thailand. Hanging in the balance, negotiations at COP27 go down to the wire, with some officials threatening to walk away. And on the eve of the World Cup, FIFA's president accuses the West of hypocrisy over its criticisms of Qatar. And that is the world today. Thank you for watching. We're on smart TV apps, Roku, Apple TV, Amazon Fire and Android TV, YouTube and Dailymotion, CGTN.com and the CGTN app. And in the UK, 24 hours a day on Freeview. There'll be more news at the top of the hour. For now, though, from all of the team here in London, goodbye.